Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Wake up, stretch out. People who know me within my corporation, who only know me from conference calls, usually when after I speak or voice my very strong opinions, they'll say, "The guy's a real cowboy," to which I thank them. A couple of things on the front end. A look out. Thank you all for donating 20 minutes of your time to listen to my thoughts and ideas and experience. I want to acknowledge that I respect the cumulative aggregate investment of all of you to be here, and I take it as a sacred trust that I will return a little bit of value. My number one goal here is, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I want to stimulate thought. I want to stimulate conversation. So as a KPI, what we're talking about, I want feedback. I want to not just make this a one-way communication. So at the end, I've got LinkedIn, email, whatever, but I really do want your feedback as to not just my presentation style or anything else, but the content as well. The other thing, I kind of had a little epiphany sitting through the first sections with the title. Now, within the context of this conference, to talk about EMI making me smarter. If I walked out into the control room to the frontline operators and said, "I'm going to build a system that makes you smarter," what would be the reaction after you retrieve your head from the trash can? What I am going to be discussing here mainly is, why do we put up KPIs? I mean, there is absolutely no shortage of technologies and techniques and capabilities. I can go out and buy a ton of software to put numbers, graphs, bar charts, whatever, up on a screen. What are we really trying to achieve? And I'd like to offer, as a front end on this, is that it's not to make people smarter. Truly, what we're trying to do is stimulate passionate performance. What we're doing is providing feedback in a meaningful context that people react the way you want them to react or need them to react to produce the highest quality product in the most environmentally friendly and safest manner. So it's the whole core of what I'd like to present in the one takeaway is to really think about why you're putting the number up. It's not a report. What you want to do is build a culture of passionate performance, achieving what it is you want them to do. Make sense? Different perspective. So going forward, if you listen to the previous speaker, ditto. We're in Alberta, so I'll save time here. We're in the oil sands business. The only probably difference there is that we are into biofuels, making a lot of ethanol. Out in Sarnia, have a large plant there, and are in the retail operations. I'm personally located in the Commerce City refinery outside of Denver, Colorado, which is a 107,000 barrel a day operation of that 455. So I won't belabor the point about northern Alberta and everything that's going on there. In the vein that all disappointment is rooted in missed expectations, let's set some expectations right on the front end so you can measure my performance. I want to set those expectations, and then we're going to go in and I want to talk about a little bit what I feel is the challenge and the opportunity that EMI and KPIs and all that presents to the organization, and really share what I feel, based on 4 decades of experience as a system integrator, are what the guiding principles that I subscribe to that have resulted in some systems that I've put in place that have been functional for 12, 15 years, providing benefits. And then go through a couple practical examples. When we're talking about KPIs and putting up a number, I love this movie. Everybody's seen this movie? Phenomenon with John Travolta, Kara Sedgwick. There's a piece in there, and I'll let you can read that. But basically, The premise for those who haven't seen the movie, and oh, by the way, with Valentine's Day coming up, this is a great chick flick that even the analytics in the audience will enjoy with their spouses. But the whole setup on this is that George Malley, the John Travolta character, has all of a sudden become this genius. The tragedy of it, it's because of a tumor, which he ultimately succumbs to. But he had to be tested because the government didn't believe he was a genius. So they brought in a very high-paid psychiatrist to test him. And that's the dialogue from the movie. Very simple question. How old is a man born in 1928? Well, really think about the rest of the dialogue. Is he still alive? What month was he born? What day was he born? Where was he born? If he was born at that time, on that month, that day in New York versus California, there's going to be a 3-hour difference in his age. So it's really specifics and getting down to the grassroots and decomposing things down that you can put numbers and questions into context that people can come up with a meaningful reaction to. I look at a ton of dashboards. How many put up MTBR? Everybody puts up MTBR, MTBF. Well, we'll decompose that a little bit. So what I really want to talk about here, again, and finishing off the setting expectations, I'm going to be talking let's talk about what's not in scope, and that is identifying what is a good KPI or what you should be measuring yourself on or any of that. But really what I want to talk about is the basic attributes of the system that you put in place, something that you can carry forward, something that adds value to the frontline workers, something that develops that passionate performance that you want to achieve. So let's decompose KPIs a little bit in the fact that we've all got dashboards, but look at it from the perspective of the operator, the person driving the car in this case. Give you a quick story. My grandmother, my grandparents, I'm old enough, my grandparents, grew up without automobiles. My grandfather was a brakeman on the Union Pacific Railroad. Finally came time my grandmother had to learn to drive, and she got in accident after accident after accident. So my grandfather's response to it was buy her a Buick. Wrap enough steel around her, she's going to be great, Really didn't look what was happening. And actually, it wasn't until I got a little bit older and my grandmother was driving me around, and my parents were just afraid to death because of the number of accidents my grandmother got into. And we got in an accident, and my grandmother was going, I just didn't see it, everything. We ran into the back of a truck. And finally my parents and I was a little tight, and they said, well, what did you witness? And I said, well, don't you ever look at how Grandma drives? My grandmother sat in that Buick. She sat up high. She had no depth perception. So what she did was the big hood ornament on the end of the hood, she got it lined up with the edge of the road. And so she drove down the road looking at the hood ornament, keeping it lined up with the edge of the road. Not very effective. That wasn't driving the excellent performance or the passionate capabilities that you desired. So you really got to put the perspectives in place of what you're trying to achieve, the dashboard, or what is it you're trying to stimulate within the operating staff. Everybody puts up things like MTBR or overdue inspections, and everybody looks at the numbers and they say, oh, that's great. But like George O'Malley, let's take that number. I've got overdue tank inspections, I got 5. You got to put it into context. What does that mean? I mean, if you put up a number and all it generates is an angry manager picking up the phone, calling the supervisor to say, why are these overdue inspections there? All you're doing is generating needless work. Does that make sense? So taking a number which seems obvious, and everybody puts these numbers up. I think we're all guilty of it. But you really got to put it into context is, what kind of response do you want to generate by putting that number up? And put it into context of, okay, let's look at some of the questions, the George O'Malley questions. 5 overdue might be stellar performance. I maybe only have 2 inspectors and we had 30 that were due. So it was a superhuman effort to only have 5 overdue. How overdue are they? Are these things been overdue for 3 or 4 months? I mean, I can come up with a litany of questions, and if we went around the room, we could come up with all kinds of things that you need to know about that number to generate the right reaction. So you need, in the attributes of a solution you put in place that are putting up dashboards and numbers, you need the ability to associate all the available contextual information with that number, so that people can click on that number and put it into full context, because that actually could be a reasonably good number and represent very good positive performance. Does that make sense? Agree with that? The other thing, attribute of putting up a system like this, this one I've got all kinds of scars over. It's more than reporting. And you really got to think about the infrastructure behind the numbers that you're putting up. How well does the data travel? I mean, if I'm putting it down here, I've had the trouble of putting up a number for a report at a refinery. Next thing they want to do is publish it up to the business unit. The business unit picks it up, wants to publish it to corporate to show how they're good. They want to start aggregating the same number from different facilities. If you're multinational, you got barrels versus cubes. You got metrics, all kinds of different forms of measurement. You got different systems down at the base. And not only when you aggregate the data up, you got to keep it in context, again, so you can answer the questions. So you can't lose that contextual association. But if you're aggregating it up, the individual business units or facilities up to a corporate level, you still got to let the business unit see what the corporate's seen, so that data's got to populate back down and support localization. So if our Montreal refinery is in French, in metric cubes, and we are in English, Edmonton's in Canadian English, different metrics, everything else, if it all rolls back up, but if the Montreal operator wants to see the corporate roll-up, he's got to see it in French while I see it in English. Right? So it's got to be circular. The data's got to move. It's got to allow the localization. You got to think about the way this thing is going to aggregate across an enterprise when you start putting that base in. That's where my scars come from. It's easy to put numbers up at an individual level or even at a facility level, definitely. But what are you going to grow into and what are you trying to drive? Data travels at the speed of light, but if it's yesterday's news. So within the attributes of the system, within the analytics, as you're aggregating the data, as you're doing all of this, one of the attributes you have to support is the ability that you generate those numbers in a time frame when people's actions or their behaviors that you're trying to stimulate are meaningful at every level. So if this is a real-time aggregation and I have an incident and I constrain production or have something that, we had a fire or something, there was a mutual call out, and our corporate response center needs to respond to it, and they need to go into action around public relations and messaging and all those kind of things. It's got to be in the time frame that people need. So you have to think from each perspective at each level in the organization and the ability to alert and aggregate that within the infrastructure. Is that more than reporting? Yes? But here's my key point. with numbers and KPIs. And I love Zig Ziglar. I don't know if you ever had the pleasure to see him speak, but you can sit calmly in the room and you'll be exhausted by the time he gets done. But this one quote I love, and I think it really reflects the KPIs and what you're really trying to achieve with putting numbers up on a screen. What you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving those goals. You want to stimulate repeated, passionate, excellent performance. That's why you're putting the numbers up. Do I have a violent agreement or disagreement? Yes? No? Am I putting everybody to sleep? Stimulating thought. Have you ever thought about it that way, or have you, and I want to ask for a show of hands, or have you been putting up numbers because management wants you to put up numbers? Yeah. Yeah. But ultimately, let me go back on this one. Let's take that MTBR example. If I put up MTBR, that's meaningful, right? Everybody's plant manager where you've got critical equipment, you want to know what your MTBF or MTBR. And what I'm getting to here is, for an operator, if I put up an MTBR, what does that mean to him or her? How can they relate their day-to-day performance with the contribution that they make when they come through the fence to an MTBR? Well, if you think about it a little bit, what keeps equipment running? Operator rounds compliance, lube compliance. Do they do the pump switching to schedule? I mean, we've got engineers that define all of this information, but if all the operator sees is MTBR, and they can't relate it to their personal performance and how their personal actions in the trenches on the front lines contribute to that MTBR number, you're not giving them the feedback that they need to drive the performance you want to favorably impact those business metrics. So again, you need to present, I'm sorry, I keep looking around, they get this great monitor here, and but need to present indicators at each level of the solution in a format that is meaningful for the management at that level, and you're generating the right reaction, you're putting it into the right context. And I cannot stress enough, beware the bling. That's the space shuttle on the bottom. Okay. And a lot of times what the people who are in the trenches making the decisions that drive the profitability, the behavior that is the leading behavior that these KPIs are, the lagging measurement of, really they're very, very simple. I can get into a car, and if I'm an operator and I'm qualified to operate a car, I can very easily determine whether it needs gas or not, and on which side the gas filler is on the vehicle. So again, it's decomposing it. One last item on that is, if you want to stimulate, this passionate performance, this nation of winning the hearts and minds of individuals, that they are passionately committed to doing their very best at all times, that requires real-time feedback and award for what they're doing. That's what those numbers are up there for. But at the same time, by putting them into context, if you put the ability for people to click into those numbers and understand what's behind those numbers that you're putting up, you can stimulate process improvement and innovation from some unbelievably unexpected sources. Because operators will be out there, and if you don't give them that ability, or when you do get them the ability, you understand that they're a lot smarter than you believe. And when you give them those factors, they start doing analytics. And they start using them as proof points of saying, going back to reliability and saying, look at this trend. I've been trying to tell you for 5 years that every time this situation occurs, the pump breaks. And you've never believed me. And the operators are coming forward with the proof back. It's a phenomenal benefit that, see, so you want to unlock with these numbers the ability to stimulate the innovation within the frontline workers, tap that resource. You got a 30-year chief operator out there. You know, you give him this capability, you get phenomenal results. So, run out of time, go through quick here is that my experience has been that I really want to drive to principles. Principles and standards are my life. To identify the attributes of the solution that I'm trying to build, what I'm trying to achieve, and make determinations and set principles about whether it's going to be interoperability around standards or what's going to be pre-integrated in databases. But define the principles by which you're going to center your solution around. Principles like, we've heard it today many times, you want systems that are agile, flexible, responsive to business. You know, so you want to put these KPIs up in these numbers. You want to put a system up, but you don't want to have 20 people out there maintaining it. So that if you put a new unit up, you're spending months retweaking and integrating all of these new contributing assets, performance numbers into it. You want to be able to turn it on, start populating the tag, and have everything come up automatically. And it is possible. So this is what I refer to as principles. This is a visual that I actually generated from some work, and we did a paper for NPRA at the time, it's AFPM now, on architectural-based EMI. We called it something else at the time, but that's what it was. And that was in 1998, and that principle-based architecture is still valid today. The technologies have changed, but it's somewhat timeless. So principle-based solutions are not logos, they're not brands, they're not anything else. You own the data, you own the assets. So you develop the principles around it, and that's what we're talking about MES, and you have the standards that are coming out of S95 and ISO 15926, and the value of those allows this to happen. Somebody asked me earlier in the conference if I'm ready to retire, and I went, no. I've been waiting 40 years for this stuff to come, and now I can really start building something. So quick, what's available? So this is what we have that we built to do a quick dashboard. This is the entire refinery snapshot. Safety, environmental, production, energy, inventory, it's all there. We connect to ERP, the historian, quality, safety systems, operator log tools, targets, all of that. Took a couple of weeks. We were up from, I think the time the gentleman that's in here, in fact, came in and did it. With a little bit of my time and 6 man weeks from him, and we had the first hit, and we've been running ever since. We're expanding it out into MOCs and all sorts of other areas around process safety management. Not saying that this is the best interface, but here's a use case. They can come in, look at this, and they know within 5 to 10 seconds what they need to focus on. I've got 6 alerts. Where's the laser on this? If this exclamation point, I've got so many exceedances here. This is the refinery snapshot. My RIF is high. So you just look around here and they know exactly what to drill into. They click on those things and drill down into the contextual information to put those alerts into order. One thing we did learn also is to get the clipboard and pencil out of the hands of the 30-year-old chief operator is not going to happen. So for the millennials, we put it all online. We make it fully available on a mobile device, that all the same information is populated into the mobile format. They can drill into it. They can get the same contextual information, and for the chief operator that still wants his clipboard, he can get it. But the real thing about the attribute of the system is if I add a new critical operating point that I'm monitoring, irrespective of the format, I go one place. I add it in one place, it appears in the mobile, it appears in the hard copy, and it appears in the online report. So that's a capability. Things like, and I'll go through these real quick because I'm way over time, is the alert. I click on the alert. Those are the alerts. One click goes right to the DCS screen, so they can investigate that. They can get the trend off from that alert to see when the exceedance occurred. One more click, another click, and here's the actions that's required. So we give directive actions to those people. Click, 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 and it's all there. This is an incident management system. I've got permission to use these. This is around an injury. So they've had an injury. This one is highlighted. Here's the details about that. Here's where that incident investigation is in the process. It was an injury, so they want to go up and look at illness and injuries and look at that class of report. So here's all of the illness and injury incidents that are in the system, break it down by body part, what was involved, what was the root cause, what was the bad behavior, everything is there. So it puts that incident in full context, so there's no phone calls generated, so on. So apologize going over here, but there is a ton of technology out there that does this stuff. All I'm saying as an owner-operator to my fellow owner-operators, step back, think about what this is going to grow into, think about the sustainability, and do not get lured into ready, fire, aim. Consider the breadth of the opportunity and really think about the numbers that you're putting up there. Do not simply replicate reports that are being done on paper today or in Excel. Take the opportunity to step back and think how you can use this to drive behavior and to drive that passionate commitment to top-line performance. So get down to the root factors, get those numbers out in front of people to give the feedback. So you got to link it to individual performance. Look at the KPIs from the people in what they're seeing from the trenches, not from the top, not from management, but from the people who are picking up the wrenches, the people who are filling out the forms. Look at what you're trying to drive. I can't drive that far enough. So start at the roots and build up. And keep it principles-based. As vendors come out and new technologies evolve, you can change your beliefs, but stick to your principles, and if you do, you'll put a system in place that is cost-effective, easy to maintain, and it's supportable. So with that, thank you.